Tonight on the Midnight's Edge Thursday movie, it's From Russia with Love. Welcome. I'm Tom Connors. With us is the boss man, Andre.
Greetings, everyone.
For a moment, anyway. He'll be with us for a little bit. And we also have the one, the only Robert Meyer Burnett. How you doing?
It's great to be here. Always love talking a little Bond, especially one of the great Bond films of all time.
Absolutely. And also joining us for the first time on one of these adventures into Bond is one Jeff from World Class Bullshitters. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And, of course, we're also joined by the voice of Midnight's Edge, Rob. How you doing?
Good afternoon, everybody. Damn it. What the hell was that?
I have no idea.
I'm going through reverse puberty. I'm thinking about From Russia with Love now. I'm hearkening. I'm going backwards, regressing to the state I first saw it in.
New Jersey?
Good one. I like that.
All right. Well, as people start filing in here, why don't we get my reactions to the film? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm really curious, especially, you weren't overwhelmed by Dr. No.
No, I wasn't. No.
And I think what's interesting to me about this movie is I've always thought it was the closest realization to an Ian Fleming novel, especially at the time.
Well, I really tried to keep my thoughts to myself. So actually, this one isn't nearly as long as the last one, but I think I say a lot more. So let's check it out. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hello, I'm going to watch From Russia with Love for the first time. Let's see what I think. Bit progressive for the time, a little bit. Now we get to see Bond 20 minutes into the movie. Wow. Girl fight, girl fight, girl fight. It's a bit more like what I was expecting. Talk about progressive. Took me a while to figure out that was Robert Shaw. So Bond beat up a helicopter before Rambo. Interesting. And Jaws. Well, that was more like it. That was more what I was expecting. Not quite the end. It's pretty good. Let's talk about it. Yeah, as you see, I didn't have much to say because I got sucked into the movie. I thought it was really, really good. This was more what I was expecting.
It's one of the best, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It got a little slow going. Like, as you said, I kind of was like 20 minutes of the movie, we finally get to see Bond. I was like, but I seen what all that was setting up, and a lot of that was stuff I didn't get from Dr. No. Like, there was a lot of exposition. I'm just like, I have no clue what's going on here, as opposed to this one where I knew what was going on pretty much the whole time. So, yeah. But, Andre, since we don't have you for very long, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, well, first of all, did you notice towards the end there you had like the 60s version of a post-credit scene? Basically,
that
the Bond will return in Goldfinger. That's something that they actually started with this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because by then they already knew exactly which movie would be next, title and everything, since it was already far along in development. So that's something that you're going to have like towards the end here. No, as for me, I also like From Russia with Love. There's some really good, memorable performances in it. This is like when we start getting into a little bit more of like the memorable villains rather than Dr. No, who's like, he has like a memorable look, but he's like a little bit more bland after that, like not too emotional, like very stoic. Here it's like when we start to get into not flamboyant quite yet, but you're starting to move into that direction of Bond villain, and all the tropes aren't there quite yet, but they're getting there. So this is like the nice progression to Goldfinger, which is where like you have like proper James Bond with every little thing that's going to be a classic from there on out. So yeah, I like From Russia with Love. It's not my favorite. But it's a step of the up. What I think is cool with the earlier movies is that they actually get progressively better and better up to a certain point. How often does that happen? With most movies, you have like a pretty decent number one, and then number two is either either better or worse, and the number 3 is always worse again. But in this one, it actually got better and better for each of the first 3 movies. How often does that happen? That's something really cool with Bond. So yeah, no, I like this movie for what it is, and we get like more of Spectre. It's like some nice throwbacks to both to Dr. No, as well as some foreshadowing of what is to come.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I noticed all the Bondisms in this one. A lot more women, more gadgets, kind of. I mean, not like super gadgets, but I mean, you know, we're starting to see more of the Bondisms. Robert, obviously, this is one of your favorite films, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously there's a lot of firsts in this movie. It's the first time Desmond Llewellyn plays Q, Major Boothroyd, as we know as Q. It's also, you know, it's interesting. In the books, there's an intelligence organization called SMERSH that they changed to Spectre because of the Cold War. You know, that because of the real Russians in real life. And so introducing, I think, Blofeld in this film, and he's voiced by the character who played it's Anthony Dawson, who played the Professor Dent in Dr. No, does his voice. And I think it's really interesting. We introduce people like Rosa Klebb, and the fact that you can have female villains that are just as cool as, or just as, call them wacky or outlandish as the male characters. Obviously, Robert Shaw is a very formidable villain as Red Grant. There's a lot of, like you said, women, and there's more gadgets in the film, and they upped the budget. You know, the budget was almost twice as much as Dr. No, and we get that globe-trotting feel, as opposed to just going to Jamaica, going to Turkey, going to Istanbul. You get that sort of more exotic flavor, and the action obviously is quite. It's upped set pieces on the water and bigger explosions, and I love there's a lot more of a spy feel to this. I mean, the idea that they're stealing, you know, they want this Lecter device, and that Spectre's, this whole plot is to both disgrace and take revenge on the British Secret Service for what happened in Dr. No, but then to also steal this Lecter device. And you've got defecting Russians who have joined Spectre, and it just, I mean, for an early 60s, I mean, this came out here in the States in 63, after Dr. No. I mean, Dr. No was released in the States in 63 too. And do you know that this was the last movie that John F. Kennedy saw before he was assassinated?
No, and that's funny you bring that up. Oh, I was gonna say, go ahead, Rob, after I'm done. But I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I mean, this movie felt like 10 years since the last film, and in the advancements in the editing, the story, the stylisticness of it, it just felt like a leaps and bounds above Dr. No, in my opinion. So I get what you're saying. Yeah. And
what is a real boon to the franchise is this is the first film that has a score by John Barry. And
that's noticeable as well.
Yeah, and his reworking of Monty Norman's Bond theme, and they don't use a theme. They use the music from Russia with Love, but we don't yet get the theme song over the opening credits. It's more of an instrumental, which is great. The instrumental music is great, but it isn't until
the theme's there, but it's not used over too much
until the end. Yeah, you know, the end credits, which
like once in the early part, and then
well, we get that great alternate theme. You know, the one
sounds like a John Barry's.
The 007 theme.
I love that. I always love that.
It's great music. And it's so Connery too, because the other Bonds don't use it. We'll take that back. Roger Moore used it in Moonraker when he's in the Amazon River part. Other than that, that's just a relic. It's cool though. It's such a big part of it in the beginning and then just disappears.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, since you're talking, might as well ask you, how do you feel about the film?
If you ask me on the right day, it's my favorite Bond movie. I might phrase it like this. I think it's the best James Bond movie, but it's still not my favorite. It still comes in at number 2 for other reasons. But the thing I love about From Russia with Love is because, unlike you guys on the panel, I don't know the world that From Russia with Love is talking about because I wasn't really alive for the Cold War. That shit ended a couple months after I was born. So I love the Bond movies to look back the lens of, you know, spy culture, Cold War culture, everything that's going on in the world. And I think From Russia with Love is that one that really stands up as a great spy thriller, not just a great Bond movie, because Goldfinger is the most digestible and all that other stuff. But this one really has so much going for it, to the point where it's almost sad that you not blew your load at the beginning, but you have such a great movie, you're able to hold it out for a little while, and then you never really reach this greatness moving forward. But Tom, I didn't know you didn't like Dr. No that much. Dr. No is one of my favorites.
I didn't hate it. It was like I watched it and I'm like, yeah, it was good. It felt like a film shot in the 50s. It kind of felt like I can see where we're getting with the whole Bond thing, but it just, it was kind of like somebody making a Bond-like movie.
See, it's weird you say it like that, because I always look at Dr. No and think it has so many of the Bond hallmarks there so early. I mean, yeah, you don't have Desmond Llewellyn's Q. I think it's what Peter Burton plays him in that one. But you have the armor, you have the Walther, you have Moneypenny and the girls and all that stuff. I mean, and you have the theme and all that. I really can't think of two. I mean, the gadgets are about the only thing. And even then you could argue the Geiger counters counts as that.
Yeah, I think it was the gadgets, and then how it lost me about 2/3 of the way until the climax, and the climax is just like it's over. It's like, oh, that was it. And it did. It had that very 1950s feel, as opposed to this one, where I feel like this has like everything I expect out of a Bond movie. And like I was saying, it feels like something that would have came out in the later 60s, not the earlier 60s, with how progressive it seemed.
Yeah. Folks, this is what happens when a piece of entertainment invents, genre tropes, not cashes in on whatever's popular. When you go back to the progenitors of these films, all that stuff is there. So
I think the problem with Dr. No now, and it never struck me. I mean, I've got an original Dr. No one sheet hanging on my bedroom wall, but going back and watching it, it struck me last week when I watched Dr. No again, it just feels small in terms of its scope, as opposed to this. I mean,
I think I compared it to a TV movie, didn't I?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think the greatest thing about Dr. No is Sean Connery, the swagger he has as Bond. As soon as you meet him, that iconic introduction when he first says Bond, James Bond at the Baccarat table, is one of the great introductions in cinema history of a character.
Oh yeah,
and he swaggers through that movie. And whatever he's doing, whether he walks across a room, it's just, he's basically in this beach hotel in Jamaica and kind of hangs out with some people and, it goes to a key. And it isn't until he sits down with Dr. No that the film sort of reaches bigger heights. Mm-hmm. Whereas this film immediately, the fact that it opens with Red Grant hunting a duplicate of James Bond. The movie is heightened into the fantastical a little bit.
Oh, of course.
And so immediately it becomes, I would use the word delicious, like the pre-title sequence, like you're in, It's like, what's going on? Somebody just murdered Red Grant looks like some kind of Russian cyborg. That guy is the ultimate badass. He's not just your normal spy. This is a heightened super villain-esque character, and
he's a killing machine.
He's like a Terminator, and so we don't even know what that is yet. But it takes like Dr. No with his hand, but he just basically walks around in his lab. Whereas now you've got Spectre, you've got a mysterious leader number one who you never see his face, but he's got a cat, and it just brings it higher, and there's higher highs, and in this film I think it's a lot more fun.
Absolutely.
Tom, I'm excited though, because I have, for as much as I love From Russia with Love, I think that is a smaller film once you get to the next ones, because Goldfinger, you've seen Goldfinger, so you already know, right?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
He hasn't seen any of the Bond films.
Okay, well, Goldfinger is going to be a big step up, and then Thunderball, it's shot in CinemaScope. It feels like the biggest picture of the 60s. It's not my favorite, but I do think From Russia with Love expounds upon what Dr. No starts, but I think so much of the Bond franchise grows from Goldfinger that I'm curious to see how you'll look at this film once certain Bond tropes are established and never abandoned. Like, there are certain things from this movie, like we mentioned the 007 theme, or that more serious tone. Red Grant is really a one kind of villain. They try to bring him, not him back, but that type in the 80s, Roger Moore, it just never works. So I'm really, next week on the High Council, whenever you do Goldfinger, just message me and tell me what you think of it, because I want to know how you feel about the size of the Bond universe after this movie.
Right.
The unstoppable henchman. Yeah.
Yeah. I think another thing though about this film, along with Dr. No, is it's pretty much set in reality. Whereas the Bond films, as we move forward, become sort of increasingly untethered to the everyday
Right.
world, and they move into a more of a fantasy realm. And as we move through the Connery Bonds, they just keep getting bigger and bigger. And by the time you get to You Only Live Twice, there's, I think, an over-reliance. And suddenly we're watching a science fiction movie. And there's really some outlandish special effects, some of them which have not dated well. Whereas this film, you watch this film, and what's so great about it is it's a great evocation of the 60s, and it never becomes too untethered from reality to the point where you're like, wait a minute. And I think this is the last Bond film. The first two are the last ones to stay grounded. And then it
outside of the mask thing in the beginning or whatever, but yeah.
Hey, Tom, did you know that they had to shoot that twice because the original actor didn't have a mustache and people thought it looked too much like Sean Connery?
Huh. No, I didn't.
And brought up the JFK thing. They made this movie because of JFK.
This was on his list of top 10 favorite books. Yeah. Kennedy knew. See, a stylish president, and he knew style when he saw it.
Well, he read popular novels.
Well, Rob, I got to get your feelings on this anyway. But before we do that, Swinging Cod sent in $5. Thank you so very much. My dream has always been to build a training camp like the Smersh one in From Russia with Love. The flamethrower and machine guns were awesome. Yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I was like, I started seeing the things that I know and I understand as Bond. And like the beginning, I could totally see where like Mission Impossible's ripping off Bond. It felt like a Mission Impossible kind of opening.
Hey, Tom, did you notice
all that stuff? Yeah.
Does Wayne's World make more sense to you now?
Yeah. Well, of course, that
I always wanted to open a door where people are training like in a James Bond movie. I mean, that's what they're referenced in that one.
Of course, the Austin Powers stuff. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
I was rewatching the first G.I. Joe miniseries, and they have a big underwater battle. And for the first time it clicked, I said, wait a minute. Forget the fact that how do energy weapons work underwater? And it's just like, wait, they're just ripping off Thunderball. Not that I'm complaining. Not that I'm complaining, mind you. I don't mind a good ripoff when it's.
But we haven't got to Thunderball yet, Rob. So what did you think of From Russia with Love? I know this is one you bring up often.
Yeah, I think it's probably, it does set the stage for what's to come. It does. You start to see the series taking shape from here on out. Like I always say, I remember when I was a kid, that moment when you heard the voice tonight on the ABC Thursday night movie, Sean Connery as Ian Fleming's James Bond 007 in From Russia with Love. He turns with the right hand and fires the flare gun. And that is burned into my memory. I'm like, and when you see that again, you're like, oh yeah, it's like I'm 7 years old again. That moment is, and it's just such an iconic moment. Forget the fact that where did you get the captain's hat from? I just found on the boat. It works though. It works.
Well, it's also a great physical effect.
Yeah.
That explosion is perhaps one of the most iconic in film history.
Oh yeah. It's great. It's great. Like you said, everything just ignites at once, and it just shows you that you're watching something big, something grand, something that you're going to remember. And that's the thing. And again, we see the series start to take shape. Sylvia Trench comes back in the first 20 minutes. We don't get to see him drive it, but he has the Bentley Mark IV. From the novels, even though it was actually the 5-liter, whatever it was. But anyways, that I digress. And Q comes. We see Q for the first time. Like the series is really starting to take shape. It is more recognizable in this movie than it was in Dr. No, and so it's easier to go back and watch from that perspective. But it does stand well on its own. It really does.
Oh yeah, like I was saying, this movie feels like years beyond where the first one was, and knowing that the movie was made in 1962 or 63 and came out in 63 when I'm watching it, I'd keep reminding myself of that, because like I said, it felt like it had been 10 years since the last Bond. Even though the movie was picking up right after the first one, just like I said, the quality of it, and that was something I also brought up too, that you brought up too, Jeff, about how, you know, it goes into CinemaScope or into full 235 or 240 or whatever within the next few films. That was something I pointed out in the first film, where that kind of was a detriment to it. Like, it made it feel like a TV movie, to where this movie actually goes beyond the aspect ratio. Like, I didn't feel like confined like I did the first film.
Yeah.
Like, this movie really opens up, and it doesn't feel like a backdoor pilot for a TV show. Like, this really felt like what I was expecting out of a Bond film. I enjoyed it quite a bit, actually.
It's so fun. I mean, I can't imagine anybody hating this one.
I love the character. Oh god, the Turkish, the guy head of the Turkish.
Karim Bey.
Yeah, Karim Bey. Yeah. Oh god, that he's great. I only wish they didn't kill him off. I wish he would came back. And
you know why they killed him off, right?
In
the actor had terrible cancer. And
so
the director, Terrence Young, his brother was like the Queen surgeon. So they took him off set because they knew something was wrong with him. They gave him this full screening. He had terrible cancer, and he had like a couple weeks left to live. So they rushed all of his shots and filmed it all at once. Then he comes back to America. He ends up in a hospital, I think, in California or Mexico, and he shoots himself because the pain was too terrible. This is all on the official documentary from them. And then his son comes back at a later one, Tom. When you get the License to Kill, James Bond will interact with this like this Spanish or Mexican dictator, and it's the real actor's son. So they kind of brought him back too. But he's a great character. That's the only reason he's gone, Rob.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Actually, I did not know that. Ed, did you know that?
No, I didn't. That's actually kind of like how Murray Hamilton had to deal with Jaws 2. His wife actually got sick, so they rushed his filming in Jaws 2 so they could get him through that so he could get to his wife. But luckily, the mayor. Okay. And luckily for him, he actually his wife actually made it. So
good.
Yeah, at that point, yeah, he sadly died not too long after that though, which was another thing. But anyway, Silver Nova sends in an Australian $10. Thank you and good day. I love the classic Bond movies, the days when James was the hero that men wanted to be and women wanted to have. Thanks for all the great guests lately. Well, thank you for joining us, and then that's why we have them here. So we have these great conversations like this, and so you guys get to hear them. But yeah, I'm glad I started taking this journey now. This is probably the first, obviously it's only the second movie in, but I could see myself watching this again. Dr. No, not unless I can't really see a reason why I'd have to really revisit it.
Dr. No, you really have to be in the mood to watch. You really have to be in a specific mood to watch Dr. No, as opposed to something like From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, or Thunderball. A few of them. I mean, there's a couple of them. I have to be in a really specific mood to watch Moonraker as well. But that's, we'll get to that.
Oh God, I hope you don't get to that, Tom, because you know what I was going to say to you, Tom, when you're talking about going back to watch Dr. No. Once you encounter some of the later Bond movies, you're going to go, Dr. No may be forgettable, but it's so much better than this film and this film and this film and this film. So I'm interested to hear your take, after you get through all of them.
Well, I mean, I kind of know where things are going to kind of go astray a bit. I know like Moonraker is one of those where it kind of goes for a while.
I think you'll like Moonraker, honestly. I'm really harsh on that movie.
I'm a Moonraker apologist.
There you go.
The book's great.
Someone once tried to make the argument to me that James Bond movie should have ended a long time ago, and I said, have you seen Casino Royale? And he tried to one-up me. Have you ever seen Moonraker? More times over the last 40 years than you can ever possibly know. So,
yeah, but I'll tell you something. I saw Moonraker opening day in the movie theater, and coming in 1979 on the heels of Spy Who Loved Me, which was again like Thunderball, it was a return to widescreen Bond after Live and Let Die and Man with a Golden Gun had been flat. Or maybe they're 166. We go to Spy Who Loved Me, which is a huge epic film, and in the heels, you're on the heels of Star Wars 2 years previously. So Moonraker, when it came out, was amazing to watch. And for me, as a kid, I love James Bond, and after seeing Spy Who Loved Me was the first Bond film I saw in the theater. The beginning of Moonraker, when they steal a space shuttle off the back of a 747. Like I had built that Revell model kit of the 747 that carried the space shuttle from Vandenberg back to Florida. So a lot of, and there's incredible visual effects by Derek Meddings in that movie. A lot of the miniature work and the space work is really, really cool. And while the problem with that movie is there's a wild divergence in tone. It goes from goofy to serious, and there's a lot of it's almost peak Bond parody, that film is. So it gets a little hard to watch. But at the time, it was wildly entertaining to see in a movie theater.
Moonraker is one my father always loved because of Venice. All the scenes shot in Venice.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, he loved it. He goes, "Oh, it's a Venice. Oh, he said, you're going to go to Venice one day." I'm like,
it's also got a great John Barry score. The score for Moonraker is gorgeous. And there's a lot of globe trotting in that film. You do go to the Amazon basin. You are in Venice. You do go to the Hugo Drax's Moonraker construction facility in California.
Brick by brick, Robert. It was brought back brick by brick from France.
I know. And I mean, there's a lot of joy to be had in that movie. But again, you know, it's about as far away from Russia with Love as you can get.
Yeah. Right. Literally goes to space. Tom, they went back and grounded the Bond franchise after Moonraker because they knew how crazy they got.
Yeah.
If I could just say one quick point, you brought up the John Barry score, not for Moonraker, just across the board in general. There's we talk about in Star Wars how the worlds are the characters as well as the actual people. The music in Bond is so much of the aura that is attached to him. When you get to the later Bond movies, I hate how they get rid of the guitar. You know, that electric guitar doesn't seem like it fits with a normal orchestra, but it fits because it's for James Bond. And I'm really sad that they get rid of it when you get to the later ones, and it's something they really don't bring back until Brosnan.
I feel like they don't even have. I mean, I feel like one thing that's missing from the newest era though is like that really brassy horn sound. Like it's they have it in the new music, but it's so produced and done, and like the joy of that low, like that rasp you get from the
one trumpet. That's the same guy.
The trumpet, or that there's also the low trombone that backs it up. That gives it that wow wow wow. Wow, that really it gives it the wah behind the trumpet. You know, it's so jazzy and classy and raw and like visceral, and there's no visceral anything in the new ones.
You know, that's a really
anymore.
That's a really astute point, because if anything, the Craig Bond movies could use a bit of that. And I think that kind of music, it tells you, it cues the audience in on, we should be having fun. You know, James Bond lives in a boozy, smoky, people wear beautiful evening dresses and tuxedos, and they have a code of honor, and you know they do these kinds of the world of Bond. One of the big problems of the franchise is that world is gone, and we don't live in that world anymore. The Mad Men world of where both men and women took pleasure where they could get it, and everybody liked the finer things in life, and nobody was really worried about. When you know you can die at any moment, we're not really worried about people's feelings.
Yeah. A world consumed with style and flair.
Yes. And because if you're on the edge of your life all the time, you're going to live well. And you're going to go to the best places and drink the best booze and eat the best meals and make love to the most beautiful people. And that was part of this franchise. And I feel that, you know, Bond, ever since we're getting ahead of ourselves, but in the 80s, you know, they actually began in the 70s. Bond started chasing trends instead of setting trends. And from Russia with Love, more so than Dr. No, was very much a trend setting movie. And it was the kind of the franchise, what it meant to audiences, the 60s. This was the pinnacle of cinematic entertainment, all from Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball. It didn't get any better.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I didn't mean to cut you off. I was, I said style and flair. You know, when I went to Italy in 2012, I remember I called home, I called my parents, and they said, "Oh, you're going to go to Monte Carlo? That's it's a short ride." I said, the first thing I thought was, I can't go to Monte Carlo. I don't have a suit. I don't have a proper suit. I'll be arrested for vagrancy. I'm like, how am I going to go somewhere that stylish and that exotic with it being dressed as I am? That was my first thought. I'm like, I can't do that. That's not for me.
I got to interrupt this just for 1 second. We've got a little bit of breaking news.
Wow, this news is huge.
This is big fucking news. We were 110% fucking right about HBO
Wow.
Max. Every goddamn thing for the next year is coming directly to HBO Max.
I don't have my breaking
Wonder
news.
Woman.
I don't have my breaking news. music.
Dune. What else was in here? God, there are all kinds of movies is in this trailer that just dropped. Suicide Squad, Judas and the Black Messiah.
Wow. So there,
everything.
Do you guys think? I mean, obviously, streaming sites are going to know things about the theaters industry that we don't. Do you think this is the end of the theaters?
I think so. Well, yeah, we've been reporting on this because we've had a little bit of an inside track, and this has more to do with HBO Max. Actually, I should say that
This
has more to do with HBO Max.
Is this all exclusively Warner Brothers properties?
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to pay for this one.
The only one that's not in there is
movies.
the only one that wasn't mentioned is Bond, but I have a feeling they're going to pick that up.
I mean, this is amazing. Godzilla versus Kong,
Wow.
Mortal Kombat, Space Jam. Wow. Everything.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt that, but that was pretty big breaking news.
This is monstrously huge news.
Yeah, like demonstrously huge. So that'll be something we'll be talking about tomorrow morning, obviously, on the show. Okay, Rob, put the kazoo away.
There's my breaking news music.
Okay. Anyway, so Gutter Jedi brings up a great point here. If you missed the beginning of the show and our first discussion on Bond, I have never seen a Bond movie in my entire life. My dad was never a big fan. I grew up on things like Westerns, Rambo, that kind of stuff, but Bond just wasn't something that we watched. So yeah, I'm taking the journey for the first time through each and every one of the films, and my friends are joining me here, as you can see on the panel. So thank you for joining us going through my journey. Cedric Taylor says with $5, thank you so much. You Only Live Twice is the best Bond in his opinion.
Ooh, interesting take.
There you go. There you go. There was another great question here. Here it goes. William Jones wants to know how you guys feel about Bond spinoffs. I know Rob has talked about it before in the past. Jeff and Robert, what all three of you guys think about Bond spinoffs? Like we almost got a Jinx movie, for instance.
I remember that. I don't like the idea of any kind of Bond spinoff because it's not Marvel or Star Wars. I don't even think spinoffs in Star Wars are as great as some people say. Like, it's about him, and he lives in the real world. So it's like, what world are you going to explore? What are you going to do? Jinx is one of those characters that was popular because I remember as a kid them talking about the Jinx show or a Jinx spinoff movie, and I thought she wasn't that cool. So my roundabout answer is just make Bond movies about James Bond because everyone else is expendable.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. The problem with the Bond franchise is the most interesting character in the Bond franchise is James Bond, whereas in other spin-off movies or other franchises like the Star Wars franchise, I mean, Rogue One proves that you can have characters. I thought Rogue One was pretty good. I would like to have had more development with all those characters.
It's a rarity for a prequel, yeah.
And it would have been more interesting if you spent like a half an hour showing each member of the team in their initial environment before they came together, so you kind of knew who they were, more something like along the lines of William Friedkin's Sorcerer. But I just like the problem with James Bond is I don't want to see a James Bond spinoff. The Hobbs and Shaw of it all. I'd rather see James Bond, unless it was a brilliantly written film with an incredibly charismatic central character.
Yeah. And Rob, I want to get your take on it too, but like I said, I know we've heard your version of it, but no, I got to agree. I'm one of those, I hate things like Gotham. I hated having like 20 shows about Superman and Batman without Superman and Batman. And I don't really see the reason in having a Bond film without Bond. But again, I'm just getting into the beginning of this journey. But anyway, go ahead, Rob, and then you can grab the super chat while you're at it.
Well, Swinging Cod $5. Tom, Ursula Andress is always the reason to watch Dr. No. Yes. And there's a funny story about that. I'll tell you, I've told repeatedly, but that's for another time. The whole thing is, I always say to people who always would say to me, James Bond, how about a spin-off film with 008, Idris Elba as 008 or 006? And I say, it's the idea is good in principle, but there is no James Bond universe. It's not Marvel. There aren't all these well-developed characters running around. There's no Doctor Strange or Spider-Man or Iron Man running around the quote-unquote James Bond universe. Everybody is there to support James Bond. And yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, it's nice to reference 003 or 002, Bill Fairbanks, the man with the golden gun, didn't miss him, every once in a while. But ultimately, like I said, I don't want to see a James Bond movie without James Bond, and I certainly don't want to see him be reduced to a guest star in his own movie. And that's the biggest problem. I mean, I just saw it this morning. Gal Gadot is going to be in an original spy thriller. I'm like, okay, good, original spy thriller. There you go. Do something original. And I just don't want, like I said, this whole idea of Bond being reduced to a guest star in his own movie, or a Bond movie without Bond being pushed as sort of a solution to why can't we have such and such actor as a secret agent. I'm like, well, nobody cares. That's why, nobody cares. I mean, like I said, there's a reason why you're not seeing a movie already. The name Schlumberger, Ira Schlumberger, it doesn't have the same ring.
No,
although I would watch a movie with a character named Irish Schlumberger. I don't know what that would be.
Sounds like it should have Woody Allen in it, though. It's like
the name Schlumberger. Okay, I didn't choose my name. All right, it's not the best name for a spy, I admit.
CM Shazam sends in $4.99. Thank you so much. From Russia with Love, and all the early Bond films are like time traveling to me. These amazing Frozen in the 60s. Blue Mosque is beautiful on big screen and in person. Yeah, and this one, like I said, I love classic film, and that was what I kept saying last week. And I was trying to get across to you guys. It's like, it's not that I have a problem with this movie because it's an old film or anything like that. I adore classic film. But this film felt like it was way ahead of its time, and I knew when it came out. So, like, yeah, that's what I was trying to get across before. And as Andre joins, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, Tom, I was just going to ask you a question. How are you watching the Bond flicks right now?
I got it's funny you just talked about getting the Bond movies in 4K. That's what spawned this whole thing. Is I got a hell of a deal a couple weeks ago on Vudu for the 4K, all 24 films for like, by the way, folks, they're on $20, I think it was.
You can get those on Hulu now. So for those watching that would like to, keep up with.
Actually, they're on YouTube. A bunch of them are for free right now too. It's
20 Bond movie, everything except the Daniel Craig ones, I believe, were on YouTube
too.
Yeah.
To be honest, I've been thinking about trying to set up the whole membership thing, and I was going to actually do the watch parties live, maybe as I'm watching them, since they're on YouTube and stuff now. But welcome back, Andre. You join us just as the big news drop, as Taker 610 says here in his super chat. Home box office is taking on a whole new meaning.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Are we talking about the HBO Max stuff?
Well, we did for a little bit, but this super chat just brought it right back up. But then we were trying to get back on track, even though this news dropped midstream here.
I remember the first thing I ever saw on HBO was a special with Don Rickles. I'm like, wow, that seems like ages ago. I'm like, boy, they've come a long way.
Peter Nobles also says You Only Live Twice is the best Bond movie in his opinion. That's 2 super chats saying that, actually, Peter. So you're not alone there. Mr. Tickle Trunk, thank you so much for the super sticker. He sends us puppy pooping hearts or farting hearts or whatever you want to call it.
Oh, Mr. Tickle Trunk. You can't say his name and not laugh.
That's right. So welcome back, Andre. The world changed while you were gone.
Yes,
it's a chaotic period in history we're living in. So yeah, you can't be away for 1 hour unless everything changes completely around you, can't you? So yeah. So what happened? Something dropped on HBO on HBO Max.
They dropped a trailer not even
was
10
Dune
minutes
in
ago.
it?
Dune was very much in it.
Hey,
Every
Tom,
damn Warner Brothers property was in it.
Here's the list, Tom.
Because I have like this editorial on why Dune was going to drop on HBO Max. Of course, we've been saying this already, but I wanted to have like that video out before it was official. Like you remember with Wonder Woman 84, we were calling it that it's going to come on HBO Max in theaters on the same day, 6 hours before it was confirmed by the trades. And if only we had that video up today. Then
I know. And then just the other day, I was saying this is going to happen with Dune. We've been talking about them looking at No Time to Die.
Did they say a time frame for Dune?
No, but I'm assuming it's probably going to be this. Whenever they were going to release it this last time, it'll be out this year probably.
Yeah, that would be in like the next 2 weeks. It was going to come out.
The titles include The Little Things, Judas and the Black Messiah, Tom and Jerry, Godzilla vs. Kong, Mortal Kombat, Those Who Wish Me Dead, Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, In the Heights, Space Jam 2, Suicide Squad, Reminiscence, Malignant, Dune, The Many Saints of Newark, King Richard, Cry Macho, and Matrix 4.
Yeah, that's huge.
Of course. Yeah, that's a cinema killer right there.
Well, not just that, but what we've been trying to get across to everybody here is this has less to do with the theaters being closed and everything to do with HBO Max having less than 10 million subscribers.
Yeah. They should be competing with Disney Plus and with Netflix, but as you've been pointing out, Tom, in reality, they're competing with CBS All Access, the failure that's getting rebranded as Paramount Plus. How embarrassing is that?
That's terrible, because as somebody who owns HBO Max, I find myself using it more than most streaming services because it has a pretty solid library. I didn't know it was doing so poorly.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's because there's so much brand confusion, and I think that's part of the editorial we were working on, right, Andre? If that's the one you're talking about.
Oh, yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. I'm just so annoyed that. Yeah,
I know. I wish we had had it done for today too. Yeah. Andrew Matthews says, "Dr. No, my black ass." I'm not sure why he says that.
Do you want me to tell you why?
Sure. Okay. Is that? Oh, it's one of the. Never mind.
It's a WCB
world class
joke.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. It took me a second.
So thank you, Andrew Matthews, for following us bringing your black ass to tell us about my black ass.
It took me a minute. Brett Cohen says, "I don't really have a Bond favorite, but Goldfinger would be the sentimental favorite as it was my first Bond experience." Well, there you go. Goldfinger is probably the one I remember the most growing up, seeing like, I never watched the full movie on TV, but just seeing like it's something was on like tonight on the ABC Sunday night movie Goldfinger.
Oh yeah,
things like that. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm not watching this. It's not Ghostbusters. I know. I wasn't cultured enough as a child. Don't judge me, Mr. Burnett.
Well, no, it to me, I think it's a real generational thing because, I'm old. So watching the Bond films on television was a huge deal when you were a kid. And it was the kind of thing where, back in the old days when there was no cable, there was no movies, that you watched them on network television. And when a Bond film would come on, it was a treat. It was like Halloween. You knew you were going to get a bag full of candy. And and every kid watched Bond, and you'd watch it with your parents. And I used to have to beg every time to stay up late because it was past my bedtime. And it was always a negotiation. Like my parents would get extra chores out of me or whatever to see a Bond film. I'm like, I don't care what I have to do. Just let me stay up to 11.
Right.
And it was a thing, and you had to work for it. and then watching it, I'm like, I want to grow up and be that dude. Like I didn't even know how I was going to pull that one off, but I knew that somehow, some way, I was going to be James Bond. And of course, that didn't happen. But that fantasy still exists in me somewhere.
Don't short sell yourself there, sir.
You remember that actually when they used to run the disclaimer in front of the movie? Tonight's ABC Thursday movie featuring James Bond may be too intense for younger viewers.
Oh yeah,
viewer discretion is advised. I'm like,
yes, viewer discretion rocks.
I remember actually the first time I ever saw an Aston Martin in person. It was through a window at a classic car dealership called Yesteryear Motors in Minneapolis. And I was like, that was like up until I'm like, okay, yeah, I've seen cool stuff on this trip, but that's cool. It was. I'm like, I couldn't believe. I was like, that's an Aston Martin. That's a real life Aston Martin because you don't get to see him. You don't get to see anything like that.
Did you ever?
Oh, go ahead.
I was to say, have you guys ever seen when I was in London to see Skyfall? There was a Bond in motion exhibit. and it's traveled around where they have they had Little Nelly from You Only Live Twice. They had all the Bond cars. It's amazing. And I don't know if it's a permanent exhibition. I don't know if it's ever come to the States, but it's really cool. And seeing those cars and the vehicles in real life it's amazing. Did you ever hear the story of this couple bought at auction an unopened box like that was in storage, and it had one of the submarine cars from Spy Who Loved Me in it?
No, actually,
you could probably find this online, but this couple didn't know what they had bought, and it was, I don't know the exact details, but they ended up buying one of the Lotuses that had been like stored away for 5 years and forgotten about somewhere. Crazy. I mean, what a coup that would be. Talk about storage wars. That would be winning.
No shit, right? Cedric Taylor says with $5, thank you so much. Brosnan brought back the Connery type Bond. You mean Brosnan? Yeah. Well, and that was the thing, is they would try to get Pierce Brosnan as Bond for how many years there? For close to a decade.
Yeah.
He was Bond, and then he got the phone call, right, Rob? You've told that story before.
He had done the story Brosnan told was he had done all the promotional pictures, all the promotional photos in the tuxedo and everything. He was on his way to the press conference, to the big reveal, and his phone rings. Should I answer it? Maybe I should answer it. Pierce, this is your agent. Great news. Remington Steele's been picked up for another season. And he's just like, his jaw hit the floor, and he had to drive around LA and see all the billboards with Timothy Dalton on them for the next year. He said, he was devastated.
Yeah, what a bummer that would have been.
Well, it sucks what happened to him, but at the end of the day, I mean, look what he became as Bond. So, I'd rather have him had lost that, because I love GoldenEye and what his era of Bond brought in. So we might have never got that. His movie it could have been License to Kill. It could have stopped for 6 years. He could have done something else. So,
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Then again, we could have had Brosnan in 7 movies, though. I mean, that's a couple extra movies at him. Yeah.
Personally, I'm thinking more that we could have had Dalton in so many more movies, because I actually liked him.
Dalton
he was my first Bond.
Dalton gets a bad rap. Dalton really does. I mean, I did like The Living Daylights. License to Kill, not so much. License to Kill was just they took a lot of elements from the novel Moonraker.
Right.
And yeah, they didn't really work that well.
The real problem with that movie is it came out when Miami Vice was still on the air, and it felt like a Miami Vice episode. Bond's going after a Mexican drug dealer.
Robert, I've always thought that they would have done it a couple years earlier. It would have been timely.
Right. Absolutely.
And on top of that, it was really brutal for a Bond movie, like exceedingly brutal.
It really was,
especially towards people's legs, because you had like Felix Leiter. Not only was his wife killed, we see his leg getting bitten off by a shark, and then you had Benicio del Toro. That in like revenge for that, he lost both legs to that drug shredder. Before the rest of him fell in it as well, joining his.
I can't wait for
joining his legs as minced meat,
especially if they got freaking laser beams attached to their heads. Action Com sends in $2. There's a Jinx script. Anybody want to read it? Script Doctor probably has it. Brett Cohen sends in $5. Max better start up in Australia. There's masses of revenue they'll be missing. Actually, folks, heads up here. We're going to be wrapping this up shortly, and we're going to be doing a live stream right after this talking about the news. So we'll share the link so you guys can hop over there. I don't know if Robert and Jeff want to join us real quick. I know Robert's on a bit of a time schedule, but we're going to wrap up this Bond discussion, and then we're going to do that. But in the meantime, we're going to finish up these super chats too. Rob Atlas says with $5, Live and Let Die blew me away as a kid in the theater.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, I noticed going through the movies real quick, just kind of scanning them, that they had one movie without Sean Connery, and then the next movie was Sean Connery, and then they had Live and Let Die, and it wasn't Sean Connery. Like, so I see, like, I'm going to be interested in asking you guys about all that, but at this point, just knowing all the themes and the music that transcends the movies, that is so far my favorite Bond film before seeing any of the films, and I've pretty much heard all the Bond music. So if that
you're going to like this one. It's black exploitation.
And then LK says, is HBO Max failing because it's not on Roku game systems? I want to watch my TV and small tablet. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons. And I think we'll get into a little bit that in the live
It's on
stream.
Xbox.
Yeah, it is on Xbox now, and it's on all the other stuff, but not on Fire Stick. Or it might be on Fire Stick, but it's not on like Roku or a few other things. But we'll get to that in the upcoming live stream. Swinging Cod also sends in another $5. Thank you. You already had a James Bond movie with Woody Allen. That's right, the second Casino Royale. We've talked about that before, right, Rob and Robert?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about that.
Oh yeah.
Because that's the one Peter Sellers really wanted to be in, from my recollection. He wanted to play Bond though, like the main character. Yeah, like he wanted to play it seriously, from my recollection. Like that was a big disappointment for him. Mills sends in 35. I believe that's South African.
That's
rands.
South African rands. Yes,
Rands. Okay, yeah.
That's indeed what it is.
Anyone ever read the book or played the video game From Russia with Love? Was anyone aware Harold Macmillan and JFK had From Russia with Love in their top 20 books of all time? We actually brought that up probably before you came in, Mills. Yeah, go ahead.
I still have I have a copy of somewhere from the game From Russia with Love, actually, somewhere around here. It's not terrible. Sean Connery is actually the voice, but you can tell he's older though.
That was my number one complaint, Rob.
Yeah.
Because I bought that game when this was my absolute favorite Bond movie. And the game's good, but not great. Like, if you're like me and you're really into the movie, they say the character's name's wrong. It's just you drive the Aston Martin DB5. There's a lot of weird disconnect, but it is a fun game. But if you're looking for like a pure From Russia with Love thing, I just say skip it.
But yeah, well, I hate to do this like this, but is there any final thoughts on From Russia with Love? I loved the movie. I would definitely give it a 7 or an 8 out of 10, which is higher than I think I gave the Dr. No, I gave it a generous 7, but I'd probably give it more of a 6 compared to this. Robert, since you're one of our main guests, any final thoughts on From Russia with Love?
No, I mean, I think this is a really significant film, not just in the Bond franchise, but in cinema history, because it basically defines the genre of spy films. It changes it from one thing into another, and it really is. I mean, Dr. No could have been a one-off, but luckily it was a success, and From Russia with Love is really solidifies the Bond franchise for the next 50 years. And in terms of franchise building, it's one of the most significant films in Hollywood history.
Oh, and we got Anna. I did not know you loved this movie so much.
Neither did I.
Yeah, we should have brought you on. I forgot to even bring it up when we were talking to you yesterday. I didn't even think to ask. But yeah, any of my fellow YouTubers, if you're a big Bond fan, let us know, because we need to fill up 22 more movies here in the next couple of weeks with other guests besides just Robert. And I know, Jeff, you plan on joining us a couple times as well, and I appreciate you being here today, Jeff. So any final words about From Russia with Love before we go on to our other stream?
Yeah, it is I say it's the best Bond movie. If I'm going to give it a score, I'm going to go 10. I'm going to be super generous with it, because very few Bond movies are just, they fire on all cylinders the way this one does. Some of the subsequent ones, you're going to get great moments, but you're going to get some really dry, dull moments too, interspersed between big epic battles. So this is a really tight movie. It's under 2 hours. If you're trying to get into Bond movies, folks, don't start at the newer ones. Work your way, like Tom is, from Dr. No through all of them, so you can see the evolution and so you can appreciate them for what they are. I feel like if you're going to watch any of the old Bond flicks and expect John Wick or Mission Impossible, the newer ones, don't even give it a try, because it's not that. It's James Bond, and everything that came after it is copying it. So there's a reason why it's the biggest thing ever.
Well put. Hear, hear.
And I noticed that what was funny is how, Bond is always seen as a womanizer. There were several strong women in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was one thing I was very impressed with. And when I was saying the whole progressive thing, I wasn't being facetious. I mean, maybe a little bit with the threesome bit. But I mean, still, for that time, that was still goddamn progressive.
What did you think of the lesbian subtext?
That's the first thing I brought up. I was like, whoa, that's pretty progressive for the time. And then the same thing when he had the threesome with the gypsy girls, I was like, whoa, here we go. A little bit more progressive for the time. And that's what I was saying, is like, not just technically, but just the film itself did feel like it was like 10 years ahead of its time.
Yeah, look for one of the Gypsy Girls, Martine Beswick, to return actually in a future movie. Tom,
Oh boy.
won't tell you which one, but
Well, and I did like that it felt like it was a continuation of the last film. I was expecting it to not even really acknowledge anything from the last movie.
That
So,
does
yeah.
it, Tom.
That's cool. So, yeah, Rob and Andre, any last words before we wrap this up and head on over to the other stream?
No, I think that, as you've all said, From Russia with Love is a pretty decent Bond movie. Things only get better from there on out. And join us momentarily as we will be discussing why. The exact reason why Warner just announced that their entire slate of upcoming movies, first and foremost Dune, will now be going straight to HBO Max. We know the details. We knew that this was happening. We were just late on releasing the video, but instead, we're going to be doing that video live right now. So join us for that.
All right. So I don't know if everybody's going to be joining us over there, but hopefully you guys out there listening will be joining us over there. Until the next Bond film, which is Goldfinger. Yeah, we need like a theme here. We definitely do. Thanks again, guys, for joining me on this journey. I appreciate it.